Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and welcome to a new weekly feature we are going to be testing out for the next month or two. We're just going to kind of see how this works out. Now, many of you have been asking what's going on with the podcast. Well, here's the thing. The monthly rideshare podcast is more than likely gone at this point. I do want to try to get one more episode filmed. I think a little goodbye episode would probably be in order. But a lot of people said that they like the podcast style. They liked on their long ways to work, usually in traffic or something, listening to us talk. Now, I can't promise that, recreate that without, Mark and Mike and Cecily. We had like a pretty nice little repertoire going on there, but, Mark's kind of moving on from rideshare. I think Mike's already out the door. And Cecily, she's doing stuff for the rideshare guy. Definitely happy for her. But I'm kind of deciding, like, you know what? I'm having a couple issues with the viewers right now. Well, not I'm having issues with the viewers, but the viewers are having issues with me. The viewers, there's a lot of them who say I upload way too many videos, and they do like listening to me, but they wish that it was all more condensed, like if all the topics would be in one video. Now, a year or so ago, I tried doing one video a day where I would talk about several topics in a video, but that became a problem for a couple of reasons. One, you might have to listen to a couple topics you didn't want to get to the topic you did want to. Also, if one topic was deemed unmonetizable, then guess what? The whole thing was a wash. So for a myriad of reasons, I went back to individual videos. But I think I want to try to give this a second shot. Now, here's what I want to do. I am going to be doing what we've been doing all along. Multiple videos a day on different topics. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be collecting them in a podcast marathon type video. And that is what you are watching right now. And what this means is that after a custom-made intro to introduce all the topics, we are going to just show the old videos in succession, minus certain introductions, advertisements, unless the sponsor also wants to sponsor this particular podcast, and outros. And so I don't know how long the videos are going to be. It might be an hour or two, and it will come up on Sunday so that it's kind of like a recap. And if you want, you could watch it like you're watching it right now and just marathon all the videos in one spot with a few more commercials. Unless you have YouTube Premium, then those commercials won't show up. And we'll also make audio versions I don't know about iTunes, but like SoundCloud. We'll try to put them on SoundCloud. We'll try to, get the Apptrepreneur recap. We might actually call it the Apptrepreneur Weekly Podcast, because this will be weekly. We'll try it for like a month or two, just see what happens. So I'll be very interested in your feedback on this one. So just give me like a heads up, and that includes this video. There's really not going to be a whole lot of new content. Now, what I might do, but I haven't decided yet, I might save one small topic every week to put at the beginning of the podcast, so that there's at least one new topic for you, for the loyal people who show up on Sundays mornings and want to give me a few minutes of their time. However, for the most part, this is going to be old stuff throughout the week, all condensed into one package, either 1 hour or 2 hour, whatever. We will still do premieres so that you can catch it live if you want and maybe talk with one another. Who knows? But we're just going to try this new thing. So, yeah, I think that pretty much covers all that. So, tell you what, let's roll that intro and get ready with our first topic.
Xbox, Twitter, Uber,
Postmates,
Netflix, MoviePass, Google, Facebook, eBay,
DoorDash,
Apple, Amazon, Airbnb,
The Apptrepreneur. Uber, Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO of Uber, said earlier this year, or maybe it was last year when the stock IPO, it was IPO this year, right? Oh my gosh, has time flown? I'm sorry, it's so crazy during the holidays. But anyway, so Dara Khosrowshahi said that Uber would like to be the Amazon of everything. And by the way, being the Amazon of everything means a couple things. First of all, you will eventually get way too powerful for your own good, and the government will eventually have to break you up. The government will have to break Amazon up. And two, it means you're going to be losing money for a long, long time, which, unlike Amazon, which investors did not mind losing money for 20 plus damn years, Uber, they're getting impatient with after losing money for less than 1 year. So good luck being the Uber of everything, like Amazon. Good luck with that. However, they have announced one more thing that might actually differentiate themselves and might maybe possibly, I don't know, put them in a category where they are not just a transportation service. The thing that Uber launched today is a ski service, Uber Ski. Which, now I think about it, you probably knew that's what the product was by reading the title. But hey, let's look at this. So, Uber wants to give skiers a lift to the lifts. On Wednesday, Uber introduced a new service called Uber Ski, which is designed for riders who want to get up to the slopes, but don't feel like doing all the driving that comes along with that experience. Starting immediately, Uber users in 23 US markets will see an Uber Ski icon appear on their app when they request a ride. Riders will pay an extra surcharge for a vehicle that is guaranteed to come with extra space or a rack that can store skis or snowboards, and can also arrange for Uber Ski rides to take them home at the end of the skiing day. From a consumer point of view, this sounds awesome. From the drivers, I'm a little skeptical, of course. Drivers will not be required to accept Uber Ski rides. If they do, they will have to provide photographic evidence that their cars are equipped to handle ski equipment. Well, that's probably a no-brainer. Uber added that drivers will receive a significant portion of the Uber Ski surcharge on top of their regular ride payments. Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. We don't know exactly what it's going to be. However, from my experience, a significant portion from Uber usually means 30 to 45%, something like that. Uber still collects the vast majority of these surcharges. Like whether it's Uber Wine or Uber Eats or Uber Freight, Uber is still always screwing the people doing it. So you will make more money doing Uber Ski. And for some, that might be all you need. I will let you decide if you're one of the areas that does this. But keep in mind, Uber, I always find it interesting that Uber says a significant fee. They won't actually commit to, oh, they'll get 75%, they'll get 60%, they'll get 50%. They normally say significant portion because, you know what, hey, 35% from a certain point of view is a significant portion because that's Uber's money. No, it's not. It's actually your money, but Uber wants to take it. So anyway, Uber is launching Uber Ski in 23 markets that are close to multiple ski resorts. The areas where Uber Ski will be available are Anchorage, Alaska, Boise, Idaho, Boston, Denver, Colorado Springs, and Fort Collins, Colorado, the Colorado Rockies, Flagstaff, Arizona, Eastern Washington, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Green Bay, Wisconsin, the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, Minneapolis, St. Paul, New Hampshire, Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine, Salt Lake City, Seattle, upstate New York, Vermont, Wilkes-Barre, and Scranton, Pennsylvania, Worcester, Massachusetts, and Wyoming. I probably messed at least one of those terms up. I am sorry about that right now. So those are the cities that this is in the market. So I guess it's not going to be in my area or my parents' area, nor my brother's. Sorry, Victor, I guess you're gonna have to drive to the mountains. That's not completely fair. We're near snow. We don't really have ski resorts here, but you know, we have something. No, I kid. I kid. So anyway, that's what Uber Ski is. So yeah, I guess it's more transportation because what the heck else does Uber do? Okay, so let's see here. They have Uber, Uber Black, Uber Eats, Uber Freight, Uber Wine, Uber Ski, and Uber Dive. Really, I think Uber Dive is the only one that's not, strictly speaking, transportation. They also have Uber Copter, I guess. Uber Dive is the scuba dive thing they do in Australia, so, you know, I don't know if that's transportation so much as it's a, you know, a tourist thing. So anyway, that's all we have to talk about. I have no real opinion. I don't ski. I've never skied, and I don't think I ever will start skiing at this point in time. I know a lot of friends who do, so hey, maybe they can tell me if this is actually any good or if it works. Yeah, I guess if you do this, you'll be getting more money, but, you know, we all know what Uber means by that. You're not going to be getting nearly as much as what Uber's going to take. But hey, we'll leave it at that. That's our new product, Uber Ski. So what do you think? Do any of you want to use this? Do any of you want to drive for this? Would you consider, is this a good thing, a bad thing? I would love to know what you think. So, you know the drill. Comment below. We're going to talk about Amazon today. And Amazon is a company that it's kind of fascinating. When I first started talking about Amazon, a lot of people actually were pretty upset with me. Like, don't you dare talk about Amazon. Don't you make me feel bad about my free shipping. And I took a lot of flack for it. But as we talk more about them, people are starting to realize more and more what a bad company they are. And they have kind of taken the cake today with a couple announcements. And we're going to get into them, but after these announcements, it should be very clear that Amazon not only wants to be a successful business, they want to rule the world, and they will do what they can in order to rule the world. And they're a scary company, and you really should be paying attention to them. It's kind of like China. You know, you're so conflicted about things that are going on here that you kind of miss the bigger picture sometimes. Like, Amazon is a very bad thing, and it's probably like the worst thing that's happening to American soil. I know we talk about Uber a lot, but Uber's kind of small potatoes compared to Amazon. And yeah, after today's announcements, that I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if anyone out there still thinks that Amazon's A-okay. So Amazon controls a lot of markets. They control pretty much the online market. When it comes to online sales, Amazon trumps everyone, no pun intended. And when it comes to music streaming service, their Amazon Prime Music gets a lot of listeners. Their Amazon Prime Video is making serious headway against Netflix and even Disney Plus, and believe it or not. And the Kindle, I mean, here's the thing. I own a Kobo and a Nook. My Nook is the preferred choice, but the Kindle by far outsells everything. Amazon sells over 50% of the books in the nation. Like, they've got a lot of power. I am so thankful the Amazon Fire Phone did not succeed. I would hate to think where we are if they were also successful in that area. But there is one thing that Amazon does not control, and that is the internet. But boy, are they going to do a sure attempt to try to control that, because Amazon is launching a home internet service, and we're going to talk about everything you need to know and something else that happened with them recently. Now, what they are trying to do, like Bezos said, and you know, from a business perspective, you can be forgiven for saying why this could be a good thing. Amazon's primary business is the internet, and there are a lot of places in the United States that doesn't have internet, or at least they don't have internet that's nearly as strong. I mean, we'd like to think that streaming and cloud gaming are the future, but you know what? Hey, start getting out of California, Texas, New York, Florida, and maybe even like Pennsylvania and Oregon and Washington. You start getting away from these high-tech states, and you start going to Kansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Colorado. They don't, those places do not stink, but they do not have the server power that other states do. And so streaming and cloud gaming is kind of a novelty for them. They you know, it depends what you know, city you're in, of course, or what town. Some of the bigger cities have better internet, you know, but it's not as nationwide as you'd think it is. It really isn't. I mean, I was watching John Campy's show a couple weeks ago, where one of the co-hosts, Aaron, was talking about how her parents were in this little house in the middle of nowhere, and they only got like 200 or so gigabytes of data, and she called the internet cable provider saying, hey, can we pay more to get like a terabyte? And they were like, no, you don't understand. There's not enough lines to give you that terabyte. So it's still not a nationwide thing. It's still a problem. You know, people don't want to think that way, because people who are on YouTube and watching YouTube and stuff like that, you know, they think it's perfectly fine. But Amazon wants to change that. They want to have an internet service that can provide internet to everyone. So, and since their business is internet, hey, it sounds great, right? Like, that's what they're here for. But here's the problem. The problem is that is a case of Amazon now controlling the supply, and the supply is basically creating the whole network. The reason the Paramount decree for the movies was passed was because movie studios were making the movies. They had the advertising, and they had the distribution, and they had the movie theaters. Complete vertical integration, complete monopoly. That is what Amazon is here for. Once they control the internet, the online sites, the streaming services, then there is, and by the way, they're getting into cloud gaming too. A video that I had made but was not happy with. You know, I don't think cloud gaming specifications is exactly what I need to be talking about on this channel, but they want everything. They if the Amazon Fire TV can be the center of your living room, they want it to be that. In all fairness, so does Apple, but Amazon's just a little worse about it. So let's look at this real quick from Cord Cutter News. We've heard a lot about companies making plans for low Earth orbit satellites to bring broadband to a large portion of the world. Amazon is one of the companies making those plans. Here is everything we know about Amazon's home internet service. Who is running this? Amazon is developing their plan under a subsidiary called Cooper Systems. You'll see that name a lot when reading about Amazon Home Internet. Interesting, Cooper's president is Rajiv Badial, a former SpaceX vice president. When did Amazon start working on internet? Amazon has been looking into the options for offering high-speed internet for some time, but asked the FCC for permission to start testing a service just this summer. How much area would be covered? The goal here is broadband everywhere, but the very nature of having thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit is very different from geostationary satellites. You have equal broadband all over the surface of Earth, not exactly equal. It tends to be a lot more concentrated towards the poles, unfortunately, Jeff Bezos said in June. With low orbit satellites, broadband access could reach areas that have previously been underserved, including rural areas and developing countries. Now, I'm going to pause for a second because here's the thing. I'm not geographically intelligent. I don't entirely know how this would all work. But let's just, I'm kind of wondering, what does low mean? Like, how low is low? We do have planes in the air. You realize that, right? We have planes in the air. Hopefully, they're not so low that planes can hit these things. I don't know. But you end up servicing the whole world, so it's really good. By definition, you end up accessing people who are under bandwidth. Yep, whatever. So, how many satellites will Amazon have? About 3,236. Why is low orbit important? I'm not going to get into that. How much will it cost? We're too early to know. Here's the problem with Amazon providing their own internet. It's kind of like the situation with why Google is considered a monopoly right now. Google started as a search engine, and their whole thing was, we're going to use the information from the search results to sell to advertisers. And they were very successful at doing that. But they can only get the information from the search results, from google.com. So what do? They decide, well, we would like to know what people are emailing one another. So we're going to give them a free email account. And we have the permission to scan those emails and sell that information to advertisers. But that means that unless they're using the search engine or the Gmail service, they don't know what you're doing. So that's when they decide to do the browser. Let's look at how you're browsing as well. So the more products Google makes, the more they know about you, the more they control you. That's what Amazon's trying to do. They're trying to control every aspect of your life. That's also why they have like the Ring security system. It's not about security. It's about watching you. That's why they have the Alexa. That's why they have their own little app store. It's crazy what they own. And here's the thing. Here's why you should be concerned about it. It's not, they definitely want a monopoly, and unlike what Tim Cook says, and I don't know if this video is going up before or after the Tim Cook video, but watch that video if it's up or if it's going to go up, because I have some strong words for Tim Cook, what he said. They are one of the companies that show monopolies are definitely not a good thing. Now, let's go to something more recently, because the US and Microsoft are complaining about Amazon because Amazon, as you may have heard from here a few days ago, lost a bid for a Jedi contract. They were favored to get a $10 billion contract from the U.S. government to provide cloud services for the Pentagon. Now, they already provide cloud services for the CIA, so, by the way, just to let you know, if you are a visitor, so to speak, in America, I wouldn't be using Amazon because the CIA has access to that, and they can subpoena it from Amazon whenever they want. Fair warning. But anyway, Amazon didn't get this contract, and they are now actually filing a suit because they decided to be big babies. This kind of showed people that Amazon was super entitled. They felt like they were owed a $10 billion contract. Now, some of you have also pointed out, should the government really be subsidizing, like farming out things for cloud servers to private companies? Is that not a conflict of interest? Yes, it is. So, for full disclosure, I'm not entirely happy Microsoft got this deal either. I think the government should be making their own. Because once you have a private company providing stuff for the government, it makes it very easy for those companies to start doing things that probably aren't ethical and getting a little bit of protection because they're helping us. They can get dirt on the politicians. So anyway, so there you have Trump, Nadella, and Bezos trying to get this contract thing going on, and Amazon's claiming that they didn't get it because Trump doesn't like Bezos, and that's probably fine. But again, Amazon's not owed anything. But here's where it gets concerning. So, the US and Microsoft filed a formal complaint this weekend over how Amazon selectively shared information about the bidding process for the multi-billion-dollar joint enterprise defense infrastructure JEDI Cloud contract with the Pentagon. At one point, Amazon was considered a shoo-in to win the contract that could be worth $10 billion over 10 years. But over the 2-year bidding and evaluation process, Microsoft gained ground, and in October, the Department of Defense awarded the contract to Microsoft in a surprise upset. Amazon is now protesting that Microsoft victory, arguing that the cloud technology is so superior to the rest of the market that the real reason the U.S. chose Microsoft is because President Donald Trump dislikes Amazon founder and CEO Jeff Bezos. And Amazon says that should be grounds to vacate the award. You know, it kind of reminds me a little bit over this last weekend. A couple directors of movies, very good movies, by the way. I'm not going to say they're not. Reacting to the Golden Globe nominations and lambasting the Golden Globes for not nominating any women, but they didn't just lambaste them for not nominating women in the Best Director category. They lambasted them for not nominating them. Like, they were like, my film is so superior, of course I should be nominated. That's what it feels like Amazon's doing. Like, hey, our technology is obviously so superior. Why wouldn't you give it to us? It's like, there is no way to ruin your argument more than to make it an about me thing. Like, hey, I deserve this. I'm so much better than you. Why am I not getting this? That doesn't make anyone sympathetic towards you. However, the way Amazon has pursued this claim has already apparently ruffled a few feathers. On Tuesday, the US and Microsoft filed a formal public complaint about the types of things Amazon chose to conceal in a redacted document it filed. They asked the court to toss out Amazon's redacted document and use a version of the complaint that they approve of with redactions that they choose. That's another thing about Amazon. They cherry pick the information they want you to have. Like, Amazon every year says, like, Amazon Prime services, we keep getting 30% more Prime subscribers than we did the previous year, and they make us so much money, but they actually won't reveal how many Prime subscribers they actually have. This is what people who have a lot of control want to do. They do not want to be honest about their numbers. They want to keep those numbers hidden, because as long as they're hidden, and as long as it seems like everyone has it, then guess what? They control the narrative. And so apparently what Amazon did was they filed a complaint and they had a redacted report, and the US and Microsoft is already concerned about, like, why are you redacting that? I wonder. Ironically enough, the US and Microsoft filed their version of the redacted document under seal, meaning it isn't available for public view at all. Well, we have to acknowledge that. That's a little shady too. However, what they did share publicly gave some insight into the types of things Amazon may have hidden under the blackout ink. Hidden behind redaction. The US and Microsoft are basically saying that this complaint that Amazon hid things like the criticisms that the DoD made about Amazon's technology as it evaluated its proposal. They wrote, in its filing, AWS redacted a significant quantity of information that does not qualify for redaction under the standard. In particular, the court has held that qualitative assessments of offers proposals, such as the adjective ratings assigned to an offer's past performance or an offer's ordinal ranking under one or another evaluation factor, have no bearing on the competitive process and are not subject to redaction. The purpose of redaction is to safeguard the competitive process, not to withhold information that the party frowns on making public. And you want Amazon to provide your internet? Here's the thing. There is a big movement going on right now, and I want to get some of those people on this to maybe talk to me. People who are protesting, boycotting Amazon. They want people to know that Amazon is dangerous, as do I. And if Amazon was providing their own internet, guess what? Sites like those would probably be blocked. They would be blocked. Kind of like how Google stifles anti-Google sites in their search engine. And by the way, Microsoft does the same thing with the Bing search results. So, they all do this. For instance, Amazon redacted information on the Department of Defense's assessment of its cloud technology while sharing Microsoft scores. That part looked like this. So, and here's where this could be a problem. You see this thing? Notice how Amazon's all blocked out? Basically, if Amazon's looked lower than what Microsoft's was, it might shed light that this is why Microsoft was picked, because they were a better service. Amazon doesn't want that information known because, hey, they've been calling their bluff. Like, here's the thing. It's kind of like we reported this year that they broke all records of online sales. Never released an actual number. So when they don't release any numbers, you have to take their word for it, right? That's what it is. So, weirdly enough, by blacking out the Amazon info, the public can see that Microsoft generally scored well with ratings that range from good to outstanding, apart from a moderate risk rating on at least one metric. And then Amazon shared some gold nuggets about Microsoft's bid, including some key information on the price Microsoft submitted, while hiding Amazon's price, another thing that the US and Microsoft mentioned in their complaint. There's no way of telling if Amazon's bid price came in higher or lower than Microsoft, though there may be reason to think it could have been higher. That's because Amazon alleged in its lawsuit that the DoD changed some of its requirements in such a way that forced it to raise prices while helping Microsoft keep its prices lower. Given the redaction in the document, we don't know if Microsoft's bid really did come in lower, but if it did, that could be one reason why it won the contract. By the way, that's usually the only reason. The government likes to just save money. They will go with the lowest offer pretty much every time. The court has already ruled it's not going to make Amazon release a different version of its redacted document based on this complaint. They should. I think Amazon should be forced to be held accountable for this. It told the US and Microsoft if they wanted a more revealing version of Amazon's complaint to be made public, they would have to file a formal motion. So, yeah, and then Microsoft says they won on merits. We won't have to go into that. Let's go back here. Because, yeah, look, this is what the future looks like with Amazon in control. Amazon controls information. If they have a monopoly, they will be secretive about what they perceive to be, information you should know. They will not share how they're doing. I mean, heck, we don't even know how successful Amazon Prime as a video is. We know that some of their shows win Golden Globes awards. We don't know how much people are watching them, though. We don't know that with Netflix either, by the way. That's why I'm actually kind of thinking the Paramount decree probably needs to be expanded to include streaming services. I think there should be something in there that says, hey, you can make content, but you can't host it as well. Like, if Disney makes content, they decide they want to make internet content, they have to sell it to Netflix or Amazon, and if Netflix makes content, they have to sell it to Amazon or Disney. There has to be that balance there. There has to be that middleman. Otherwise, these companies just start walking all over us. And, anyway, I'm done. This video got way too big, and I'm now biting off way more than I can chew, I think. But, yeah. This is what we're going to look at if Amazon actually successfully launches their internet service. They're going to start controlling the information more and more, just like they control everything else. But anyway, we are going to end that there. This video went on quite a long time. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I would love to know. So, comment below. We are going to talk about AB5 a little today, but we're going to talk about it in a very different way. Because here's the thing. As much as I have pushed AB5 to be a thing, because I think for Uber, Lyft, Postmates, DoorDash, I think for all the people who work for these companies, AB5 will be a much better improvement. I have heard the argument, people don't want to be employees, they want to be independent contractors. I have made the counter argument, you are employees in everything but name. Uber and Lyft control how much you make, what you do. The only thing that they control whether or not you can be on the platform, off the platform. They prevent you from building your own clients. It's all Uber and Lyft clients and Postmates. The only thing you get to control that you can do that they can't make you do is to get on and off the app. That's all they do. So you are an employee and everything but name only. However, there are downsides to AB5 passing, and one of them, ironically, affects me. You might think this is a clickbait, but it's not. I'm actually going to share a personal story on how this might actually affect me as an independent freelance writer. And what am I talking about when it comes to AB5 hurting freelance journalists? Well, this is what I'm talking about. Laws to protect Uber drivers could put freelance journalists out of business. Not every independent contractor is in danger of exploitation. This is why sometimes people don't like the government to get involved, because they tend to overreach, and I would agree. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do outside of this channel. I'm not going to give too many details for privacy reasons, but I think it's funny that I've been accused by some people of being a failed journalist. Because here's the thing, I actually do freelance journalism as a side gig. I actually make money for writing articles. And yes, they are vetted, and yet once in a while a mistake is caught, but then the editor says this doesn't seem right, and so I, fix it. This is a very standard process on how this all works. So I actually get paid as a journalist. Now, some of you might be saying, well, where can I find my stuff online? Well, here's the thing. If you want to find my movie reviews, you can find them at www.icritic.net. As for articles I write for local papers and everything, I'm not going to share what those are, because here's the thing. They're usually written under pseudonyms. if you are going to do YouTube as a side gig, and in my case, it's becoming a main gig, you do not want your name conflicted with these things that you're going to be writing about. So, most of the people who publish my works, they know what I do, but because it is under a pseudonym, they are not bothered by it because their advertisers can't search that name and find out, like, hey, this person makes these YouTube videos, and we're going to pull our advertising because you're hiring someone who's so clearly anti-Amazon, so clearly anti-Uber, so clearly anti-Disney, even though I'm not. I'm not anti-Disney, but I have very big issues with the way they run their company. And the new AB5 law says something about the thing that you can only write so many articles a month. Well, I write hundreds of freelance articles a month. It's a pretty good business, and I can't do that when AB5 takes shape and becomes law because journalists were not given an exemption to AB5. So let's look at this too. They're wording it better than I will. In 2003, I walked away from my full-time $80,000 a year job as the executive editor of a national magazine. I had no other job lined up. I just had a lunch, having worked in the publishing business for about a decade, that I could have a better work-life balance and make a lot more money if I put out a shingle as a freelance writer and editor. Being freelance is very lucrative when you do it properly, by the way. As it turns out, I was right. Today, I work fewer hours, I work only the hours I want, and I make six figures. I'm happier, I get to pick my projects, and I get to choose which editors I want in my life. I am 47 years old and with a career that is successful in pretty much every way. But that career will no longer exist if my home state of New Jersey and other states like it continue on their current path with independent contractor legislation, putting freelance journalists like me out of business. In early November, New Jersey followed California's lead and introduced Senate Bill 4204, nicknamed the Uber Bill. It is a version of California's recently passed law intended to solve a problem with the growing gig economy, and it is a problem, and I think most journalists would even acknowledge that. That problem, the state says, that the gig economy companies classify workers as independent contractors rather than employees, which means businesses can exploit workers by failing to give them health and other benefits, and that they don't have taxes taken out of their paychecks. New Jersey's Department of Labor and Workforce Development is going after Uber and its subsidiary in the courts for what the state says are about $615 million in unpaid taxes in my home state alone, which, by the way, I still think that's awesome that New Jersey actually called their bluff on that. New Jersey's legislation happening at the same time as the court action is intended to solve that worker misclassification problem by doing what California's AB5 did, codifying a legal standard for what an independent contractor is. Other states, including New York, are expected to introduce similar independent contractor legislation next, and presidential candidates Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have said they support this type of legislation going forward. The laws are being marketed as a pro-worker, but the way they are being written is so strict that they are already starting to destroy the careers of people such as me who prefer to work for ourselves. Like, as a six-figure freelancer, I am not the same as an Uber worker who may feel exploited. I have health insurance, I have a retirement account, and I have an accountant who makes sure I pay my taxes every quarter. This is true. I mean, now, I don't have an accountant, by the way, but I do pay my taxes. I keep meticulous receipts of everything. By the way, some of you watch, like, my vlog channel, and you see all of these discs and stuff that I buy, like movies, video games, toys, and you kind of wonder, do I even have time to play with all that stuff? And the answer is, frankly, no, not always. So why do I buy them all? Because my freelance journalists make those business expenses. That's why. So, you know, like this, or not, is a business expense because I'm using it for business. It's funny how that works, right? But Uber drivers don't typically keep those meticulous receipts. I'm amazed how every single year we have to make a video, like me and the Uber community, not that there's much left of it, but you know, we have to make a video like how to pay your taxes. Like, guys, rideshare has been around for a long time. You should know how to do your taxes already. But there we go. The language in these independent contractor laws, though, make no meaningful distinction between exploited contract workers and people like me. Instead, the language makes it impossible for people like me to work within the letter of the law. And that's, by the way, a fair point. Because here's the thing. Independent contractors, like what I do with the freelance journalism, I choose my rates. There's like a rate negotiation between me and the editor. Like, they will offer me this much to write this article. I will say, I would prefer this much. They say, we'll pay this much. And I'll either accept that or I'll say, could you consider coming here instead? It's a negotiation process. So once we've got that all figured out, I write the article, and I'm paid, and then we either decide we like each other and want to work with each other once again, or we don't. And by the way, when I have that relationship, I can even use other editors as kind of bargaining chips, like saying, well, I'm getting paid this much money from this person for this article, so, would you want to pay this much for this one? This is how it works. It's a bargaining. Uber and Lyft drivers in Postmates and DoorDash don't get to do that. They don't get to do that. So yes, there is a distinction on how this works. And the way AB5 is written admittingly, and I wish it was revised just a little before it was passed, is that, hey, guess what? When you have certain freelance jobs where you can name your own rates and stuff, I don't think those should fall under this umbrella, because they're negotiating their rates. They are independent, even if the work they're doing is not outside what the company does. This is why I hate Uber and Lyft. Why they had to ruin everything for everyone. They're kind of like Netflix. They were big babies. It's like, oh, this is the future. We're doing it our way. This is the better way. And no thoughts whatsoever about how you're affecting anyone else. Selfish jerks. New Jersey's S4204, for instance, says I have to do all my work outside all of the places of business of the employer. That means I can't spend even 1 or 2 days of an 18-month front page project outside my home office having meetings with my editors in a place like the Washington Post newsroom. How is any freelancer, no matter whether she is a journalist or a graphic artist or a public relations specialist, supposed to run her business if she never takes meetings on any client's premises? The upshot, that's kind of like being a realtor and not being able to show the house off. I understand where they're coming from. The upshot of clauses like that one in S4204 could be crippling fines for employers, and because of that threat, according to testimony given during a standing room only hearing in New Jersey's Capitol last week, editors and publishers in New Jersey are already saying the same thing the ones in California are saying to freelancers there. Thanks, you're great, but we'll find our writers and proofreaders elsewhere. So, by the way, I'm not 100% concerned about this, because this obviously means that if I'm going to continue to freelance, I will just have to freelance for companies that are in other states other than California. It'll be hard to build this clientele, but hey, I don't mind making a few extra business trips. You might even see me on location a little bit more often, and if you do, that's because I am dealing with these editors. I have to get work outside of California. Thank you, AB5. These states, in writing such overly broad legislation, are hanging a giant toxic neon sign around the necks of the middle class, and these laws spread across the country. Everyone from truck drivers to caterers to yoga instructors has their livelihood in their crosshairs. The people testifying in New Jersey that their careers would be hit have ranged from lawyers to wedding photographers to bakers. Newspaper representatives tried to explain that people who deliver those papers are independent contractors, and if this legislation becomes laws, citizens will no longer get their local news delivered to their homes. Well, look, they probably will. They'll just do it through the internet. Sorry to say. I do think the idea of having a paper boy, not that I want those jobs to be gone per se, but it's that job has been around for a long, long time, and very few people use it, and it serves no practical function. It's like Blockbuster. Look, we have nostalgic feelings about it, but it was an outdated business model. We don't need it anymore. So, the lawmakers seem genuinely stunned about how many jobs operate under the independent contractor model in modern-day America. They really seem to have no clue. And no, they probably didn't. And let's be honest, they didn't research it well. Because here's the thing. They had this thing, like, they had a target on Uber and Lyft. They wanted to get them. But instead of getting like a handgun, which is probably all that they needed, they got a machete and shot it off. And before they realized it, they had struck more than what they wanted to strike. There were other companies caught in the crossfire, so to speak, that were doing things perfectly fine, perfectly legitimate, and now they are harming those businesses and the people who work for those businesses. I am, of course, one of them. But again, I will survive. I am resilient, and I am resourceful. I have several forms of income. This will be a hit come January, though. Those of us who chose to be independent contractors are not a small group of people. The Labor Department, as of 2018, said 1 in 10 Americans was working as an independent contractor, and while union members hit an all-time low in the United States in 2019, Intuit and Emergent Research say the number of Americans working in the gig economy will grow from 3.9 million in 2016 to 9.2 million by 2021. We're getting close to there. The lawmakers writing this legislation have no idea who the millions of us choosing to be independent contractors are, or how our industries operate, or why we want to remain our own bosses. Here in New Jersey, the power behind the legislation is State President Steve Sweeney, a 6-year-old high school graduate with no higher education on his resume, and whose day job is serving as vice president of the International Association of Bridge, Structural, Ornamental, and Reinforcing Iron Workers. His worldview matches that of the senators we came up against in the hearing room. They seem to truly believe we're all just confused about our ability to protect our own businesses. I think the fervor being built against these bills is largely made by large companies that want to continue to exploit workers. A true 1099 worker, we're not doing anything to you. We're not attacking that worker. They wound everyone up to a frenzy. They wound everyone up to a frenzy right now. Based on the outcry that has erupted in New Jersey in the past few weeks, those of us in a frenzy are at the point of exasperation for good reason. The people raising their voices against this legislation, including working mothers who need flexible schedules to care for kids. They are people, I'm actually going to have to say something because this kind of actually, I think this is actually probably a good point to say this. When I went to the AB5, what was it? It wasn't a protest. It was the pro rally, AB5 thing in Sacramento with Rideshare Professor and Dave the Uber Slave. We were watching people come up, ever so carefully, share their positive stories about driving for Uber and Lyft and being against AB5. And here's the thing. I'm not going to say all of them were fake, but it felt fake. And one person in particular came up and I said that was an actress. Now, I'm not going to say who that person was, because it was pretty vague in the video, but that person contacted me and we had a nice phone conversation, and this person was not an actress or an actor, as they prefer to be called. They were simply someone who did, in fact, strongly believe in what they were doing, wanted to remain an independent contractor, was perfectly fine. Now, they admitted that they were fairly new at the time when they made that speech and did not realize all the things that were going on and why a lot of drivers wanted this to happen. But, that was an example of someone who, genuinely did not want this to pass, and they had their reasons for not wanting it to pass. And so, as I've told people, if you have reasons for not wanting AB5 to pass, I can't tell you you are wrong in feeling that way. And so I have to apologize to that person. But anyway, based on the outcry that has erupted in New Jersey in the past few weeks, those of us in a frenzy are at this point... Oh, sorry, we went over that already. They are people with disabilities who need to work whenever they feel up to it. They are people in professions that traditionally welcome women, jobs like marketing, publishing, public relations, teachers, and communications, but where full-time opportunities are not what they used to be. They are people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who can thrive as independent contractors, but who, because of ageism, are likely to be last on the list as a full-time hire. Because of the uproar, much of it caused by my fellow writers and me, who have been publishing op-eds, banding together on Facebook, jamming state house phone lines, and more, lawmakers are now saying they may try to rework this deeply flawed legislation yet again. Some of us, including me, met with Sweeney and his staff this past week to discuss it. They are also saying that even if on paper people like me are made into lawbreakers for taking an in-person meeting with an editor, the state will interpret the law in a way that favors us. Believe them, they say. They promise. No, don't believe them. The government doesn't seem to understand anything. To me, that last bit sounds an awful lot like, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Frankly, I'm terrified, and everyone who works happily as an independent contractor should be, too. The independent contractor laws now being written in a handful of states are setting precedent for how the language is going to be written across the country. If we screw this up in New Jersey now, then millions of Americans stand to be screwed over later. It's time for an in-depth, smart, nuanced national conversation about the meaning of the term independent contractor in the age of the gig economy. We are the United States of America. We put men on the moon, invented the personal computer, and cured polio. Surely we can figure out a way to write legislation that protects both an exploited Uber driver and a six-figure freelancer. I agree. Now, here's the thing. AB5 has already passed in California, and the more that I found out about it, the more I'm kind of like, maybe this wasn't so good for other things. I am legitimately getting screwed by AB5, but I am willing to have a conversation about it because, again, I've been talking for a long time. Uber and Lyft and Postmates, they need to be in check. They need to be kept in check because they have exploited way too many people. They have just done this over and over again, and something needed to be done. And this is where the problem comes in, because if you write this bill that specifically targets just Uber and Lyft, it could rightfully be sued out of existence because it is discriminatory in nature. So they had to cast a wide net, but now they are affecting industries and jobs that should not be affected by this. This, by the way, includes nurses, psychologists, like medical fields that, they need to, it's scary. It's absolutely scary what AB5 is going to actually hurt. Now, do I regret throwing my support behind it and going out there and saying we need to pass? No, I don't. Absolutely not. And in fact, I wouldn't mind if AB5 was amended just a little bit. I would be okay if it just singled out gig economy worker. I think it was just a couple small changes, like the way the freelancers, so to speak, conduct themselves could make a world of difference on what constitutes as an independent contractor and employee. I believe that. But who knows? We won't know how that's going to work. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. It's been signed. It's been passed. I mean, is there a strong case to overturn it in the election based on this discrepancy? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I would hate to think that Uber and Lyft are getting away with it again. But yeah, it is affecting people that it was not intended to infect, but it will now. So we need to talk about this. We absolutely do. In the meantime, I'm still leaning towards an AB5 is better than most. And if anything, maybe this should be a wake-up call for the rest of the country that Uber and Lyft have caused so much more damage since their inception than we want to admit. That maybe we need to just take a harder look on whether or not we want to do business with them in the first place. But that's where we're going to leave this right now. I want to know... Oh, sorry, I got hiccups all of a sudden. I want to know what you think about this. Please, comment below. Today we are talking about Apple. Now, I have expressed concerns about Apple in many ways before. I'm not even that big of an Apple fan, to be honest. You know what I have of an Apple product? This thing. This is the only thing about Apple that I own. I own an iPod Classic, and as long as that thing works, I will probably go to the grave with it. But these things are not known for working forever, so, that probably won't happen. But anyway, I don't have a Mac, don't have an iPad, don't have anything. My wife loves Apple, and one of my groomsmen is a huge Apple fanboy, has been for years, and, I talked to him before we made this video, because when we talked about the story I talked about today, he wanted to add some clarification, which I will talk about in a moment. And our story is going to start with this picture of Tim Cook looking very contemplative, let's say. He's sitting there, he's thinking, He's a man who likes to think. He's always playing 5 to 10 steps ahead of the competition. He is a good CEO. I don't want to say he's a bad CEO if you just want the company to grow. He has helped keep Apple very stabilized. Like, many people were worried about Apple after Steve Jobs died, and Tim Cook did keep the ship going. And Apple continues to sell more phones than ever before. And the funny thing is they continue to sell more product without actually innovating. Yeah, there's a new product here and there, like the Apple Card and, the Apple Watch, I guess. But for the most part, the iPhones and everything, they've more or less stayed the same. Well, he has said some things I have disagreed with before. Like, he has spoken very openly about wanting to control the Apple marketplace, which I have big problems with. One of the reasons I like PCs is because I can do things on PCs that Apple does not want me to do. Not the least of which is upgrading my own computer to make it better than the way the manufacturer made it, but whatever. And, when he was making Apple TV, he wanted everything to be G or PG rated. He kind of backtracked a little bit on that, but, he just says some stuff that is really stupid. And what my friend has pointed out is that Tim Cook is an idealist. Like, he kind of pictures like, hey, in an ideal world, this would be a good thing, and we could have this, and everyone would be happy. And yeah, in a perfect world, you would be great. But that doesn't mean you say stupid crap like this. Where's the headline? Apple CEO Tim Cook says monopolies aren't bad if they aren't abused. Lost for words right there. Apple CEO Tim Cook has defended the existence of monopolies in business while also denying that Apple has a monopoly in any sector. That's the context of this, by the way. He was asked if Apple is a monopoly, and he came up with an answer for them. In an interview with Nikkei Asian Review in Tokyo on Wednesday, during which Cook discussed a range of topics, including Apple's treatment of competitors, he said a monopoly by itself isn't bad if it's not abused. The question for those companies is, do they abuse it, he said. And that is for regulators to decide, not for me to decide. Yeah. Almost at a loss for words. Cook insisted that Apple was not a monopoly, a line he has maintained for the duration of his tenure, despite Apple having faced multiple complaints of anti-competitive behavior from app providers that compete with its service. One such accusation came from the music streaming service Spotify, which filed a legal complaint with the European Commission in March. Spotify was unhappy with the 30% fee that Apple charges in App Store subscriptions, arguing that as Apple makes it difficult for services that try to avoid that fee, Spotify would have to raise its prices to account for the levy. So what does this mean from Spotify? Well, here's what it means from Spotify. Spotify's subscription service, and Spotify sucks, by the way. I do have that Spotify list, but I don't pay their subscription service. I pay for Google Play. For $10 a month, you can stream music. Apple Music, by the way, also has a service. Apple Music. It's $10 a month, last I checked. But here's the thing. Spotify has to pay a 30% fee for the app being on the Apple Store. Apple does not, because it's their own product. Which means Apple is basically able to undercut Spotify, because Spotify has to either take that 30% hit off at $10 and lose money, or they have to raise their product to $12.99 to compensate for the fee, at which case their service is more expensive than Apple, and people won't want to use Spotify when they can use Apple. You see what the problem is. So yes, Apple, in my opinion, is doing anti-competitive practices. And I agree with him. So here's the thing. Cook keeps denying that, you're not our product. It's very clear in mind. We won't believe in traffic. We don't believe in trafficking your data. I don't care. The bottom line is Apple is a monopoly. They are absolutely a monopoly. So let's look at this quote. So the context of the quote was that he was pretty much asked if he was a monopoly, if Apple was a monopoly. And he, of course, denies it. But because he knows that Apple's been classified as a monopoly over and over again, and because he knows that's the perception out there, he said, but monopolies by and of themselves are not bad. Monopolies can be good if the companies are actually, responsible with them. Well, no, Tim Cook. You're not. You're not. Monopolies are not good, no matter how you slice it. They are anti-competitive, and they are unfair, not only for consumers, but for companies. Like, I have never known a situation where there has been a monopoly and everything has been hunky-dory. Like, here's the thing. When Netflix had a monopoly on streaming, before, Disney Plus and Hulu and stuff started coming up, Netflix started raising the prices all the time on their customers. Not only that, they would squeeze the content provider, saying, hey, we're the only place you can sell this stuff to if you want to stream it, so give us it at this much. When Amazon, who sells over 50% of the books out in America, get into a hissy fit with a book publisher, they will unlist their books from the website. Now, that's a moral conundrum because as a store, Amazon has a right to sell and not sell whatever they want. But here's the thing. On a moral ground, they are simply not selling it because they want the product cheaper, and they are using that power, the fact that they can sell more than 50% of the books, that they can squeeze the publishers. When Disney has a monopoly on the market, and they do, they own 40% of the market. They're like, look, 8 of the 10 top grossing films of the year are Disney films. And by the way, one of them, Spider-Man Far From Home, is a Sony co-production with Disney. Martin Scorsese had every right to make the comments he made. It's scary. And by the way, what do we talk about all the time on this channel? Uber. And Uber is a monopoly. Or more specifically, Uber is a duopoly. And what is a duopoly? I'm glad you asked, if those of you who are not aware. A monopoly is when one company has market control over an entire product. Now, a duopoly is when it's two companies. Now, two companies would suggest competition, but here's when it becomes a duopoly. Because when Uber and Lyft started, they were both trying to reach number one, and so they did things to undermine the competitor. But then at one point, they seem to realize, why are we fighting with one another? We can just basically copy one another. And then we're the same service, and people will go to one or the other, whatever one they kind of feel like doing, depending which one isn't surging. So you have a duopoly. There are two companies, but they are essentially acting like a monopoly. They don't compete with each other, and there's no one to compete with them. And if you are a driver, you see how bad that is. If you're a customer, by the way, you don't see how bad that is, but it is bad with you. Hence the upfront pricing. With a duopoly, you have noticed your prices go up. However, if you talk to your driver, the driver is not getting paid any more money. And yeah, Amazon does so many bad things. When Microsoft was number one, king of the world in computers, and they were giving away like the Internet Explorer, like when Microsoft got caught on two fronts with antitrust. First of all, people used to charge for browsers. Anyone remember Netscape? Netscape was a browser you paid for. But Microsoft started releasing computers and Windows with Internet Explorer for free, therefore undermining the reason to buy a browser. And not only that, with their browser in it, it would make certain sites that Microsoft was huge competitors with not work properly. They were caught in anti-competitive, they were caught doing anti-competitive stuff. Monopolies don't work, and Apple is clearly one of them. Right now, Apple has the number one phone in the world, which connects with the Apple TV, which connects with the Apple Watch, which connects with the Mac. And by the way, if anything you want to put on there, it's a 30% commission fee, and if it's successful, you can bet Apple will have their own product, which means it will steer you towards the Apple product, because the Apple product will either cost the same or it will be cheaper, and of course it will sync with everything. They might not show your data, like they don't transfer data, but they are storing your data, which means one day Apple could decide, you know what, it's way too lucrative, let's sell it. What Tim Cook said is dangerous and scary. I think by these comments, he's kind of, by the way, admitted in a roundabout way that Apple is a monopoly. He's trying to, as they say, soften the blow. So whenever they're actually officially labeled a monopoly, he's putting the brick pieces there like, well, look, monopolies aren't bad if the company is responsible. He's setting up that storyline because when Apple is eventually called a monopoly, he can point out, well, look, maybe you do classify as a monopoly, but look at the good things we're doing. We're not selling your data. We're not telling other companies that they can't be on our platform unless you're, PORN, then you can't be on at all. So I think this man needs to be fired. I think he needs to be fired. He is dangerous and he is scary. Like, the last time I was super upset with this guy was when he was accepting an award and he said it was Apple's job to police thought. That was what his words were, like saying, hey, there are dangerous things out there and dangerous opinions. And as Apple, as a safe company, we are the ones who must police you. We must protect our users from bad thoughts out there, aka Republicans. He doesn't like conservatives, so as Apple, like, hey, we think this is the agenda you need to go on. No, Tim Cook, whether I agree with everything Donald Trump says or not, you don't have the right to censor him or any of his voters' opinions on the matter unless they are calling for outright violence. But Apple feels like they should do that. And now he is in a roundabout way admitting that they are a monopoly. But he's saying, hey, monopolies aren't bad if they're responsible. There has never been such a thing as a responsible monopoly. Never existed. That is about as likely as the Tooth Fairy existing and Santa Claus. It does not exist. It kind of almost reminds me of that joke in the Chasing Amy movie where Jason Lee goes up to Ben Affleck and he said, okay, here's the thing. We have a man-loving lesbian, the Easter Bunny, and I think a birthday cake. Which one do you choose? And Ben Affleck's like, the birthday cake. He's like, why? He's like, I don't know. No, and it's like, because the other two don't exist. Substitute the man-loving lesbian for a monopolistic company that has responsibility. There you go. So anyway, I think this man's dangerous. I don't like him at all, and will, once again, not buy any more Apple products, although my wife loves them, so I guess they will keep being bought for her sake. It's tough being married sometimes to someone who does not understand this. On the other hand, she is such a wonderful person, so nice, so innocent. I am very blessed to have her. And I'm glad to be sharing this Christmas with her. In fact, you know what? Just thinking about her is making me feel better already. So, hey, let's end while we're on like a positive note. What about you guys? Do you agree with this? Do you disagree? What kind of Apple products do you like? Do you like them? If not, why not? And if you did, but you don't, or like, just whatever. Let's end on a friendly note. I'd like to know. Comment below. Now, today we are going to talk about Uber. Now, I have talked about Uber quite a bit, and today we are talking about a very strange order that a judge made from Uber. He requires them to make an email address. Now, what is this email address for? Well, I'll give you a little hint. It has a lot to do with the arbitration clause that's hidden deep within the driver-user agreement. So this topic was inspired, well, not inspired, I guess I got the information from it, from this Jalopnik article from Aaron Gordon, whose work I love, by the way. Why a judge made Uber create an email address. Because this is really odd. Like, this headline, I was like wondering, what is this about? Because I was under the impression that Uber did have an email address. I, in fact, was under the impression they had several email addresses. So what was this? Let's take a look. So, on November 25th, Uber sent an updated technology services agreement to its drivers through the driver app. Like all terms of service we encounter on the internet, the 27-page single-space agreement flashed across their phones when they opened the app, hoping to make some money that day. Drivers couldn't use the app and therefore to drive for Uber unless they agreed. The app even allows drivers to agree without opening the document at all. By the way, never do this. Never do this. Always have a semblance of an idea of what you are agreeing to before you agree to it. Quote, nobody reads 30 pages of, stuff the average human can't understand in the tiniest font in the world, one driver from the Philadelphia market told Jalopnik. When you're trying to go to work, you press I agree and they activate your app. To be fair, some drivers Jalopnik spoke to did read the entire agreement, but the ones who do often have an even more cynical impression of the relationship with their algorithmic boss. If a driver reads the agreement thoroughly and carefully, it's painfully clear Uber and Lyft don't have your back or support drivers, said another driver who requested anonymity out of fear of retaliation from the ride-hail companies. I think most drivers would be stunned if they realize how truly on their own they are out there on the streets in their own cars with total strangers in the back seat. Among the many provisions that make this clear is the arbitration provision, which requires drivers to settle disputes with the company in private closed-door proceedings decided by an arbiter paid by Uber rather than in court. We've talked about this arbitration process many, many times. It's not a fair process, and you should opt out of it if you can, which actually, I'm getting ahead of myself there. It also prevents them from joining class action lawsuits such as over their employment status as independent contractors. Not only does the mere presence of an arbitration provision exemplify the control Uber wishes to exert over its so-called driver partners, but does so the history of that provision, how it came to be, and what options drivers have to fight. Buried at the bottom of the agreement, and this is important for all you new drivers out there, by the way, there is a provision that allows drivers to opt out of the arbitration clause, giving them the right to sue Uber in court like normal. Because, Uber's had so many lawsuits, that's totally normal. Quote, it's the companies that are trying to go to the arbitration because it's to their advantage, said Shannon Liz Riordan, who I dislike, by the way, a lawyer who fought Uber for the right to opt out of arbitration. Systematically, it's a system that helps corporate defendants. And we've talked about it too. So, arbitration provisions only work if people agree to them, which is why Uber has made it very easy to agree and very difficult to opt out. In fact, Uber tried to prevent drivers from being able to opt out at all. But due to Liz Riordan's efforts, all drivers have to do now is send an email to optout@uber.com from the email address associated with their Uber account and include a statement that makes it very clear you're opting out of the arbitration provision, your name, your phone number associated with your Uber account, and the city you live in. It wouldn't hurt to clearly state the email address associated with your Uber account as well, even if the opt-out provision doesn't specifically state that you must. Additionally, drivers can use an online tool created by Rideshare Drivers United that walks them through the process. Drivers must do this within 30 days of agreeing to the provision, which give drivers until December 25th, 2019, if they agreed the day the new agreement was distributed. So now it goes on to like a lot of about arbitration, what lawyers think about this. I personally think it's a extremely scummy thing to do, because here's the thing. How should I put this? You want to have defense when you're suing Uber. When you have a complaint against your boss, like, you wouldn't go to complain to your boss about something that you found to be problematic going on in your company without first approaching HR. You want an HR to be there. Now, granted, sometimes HR has the company's back more than yours, but HR is, in theory, supposed to be there where it's like, okay, yes, they have the company's back, but they also have the employees' backs. And they have the employees' back, especially because the employee, if they bring an issue to HR and HR doesn't do anything about it, the company becomes liable. So that's what HR is there for, to prevent things like that from happening and to hopefully solve problems before they get to the point of someone getting sued. Uber doesn't have an HR department, though, at least not one that works for the drivers, and they only have independent contractors. And yet, that means that they are more sustainable to being sued than before because they don't have that HR department that helps them out. So that's why they had the arbitration agreement. Like, they wanted to force drivers to basically, go to them to solve a problem, which is like, most of us have read the Susan Fowler blog post, The Very Strange Year of Uber. She's writing a book about that, by the way, about her experiences with Uber. And we know that Uber actually not only encourages bad behavior, and I think to a certain extent they still do, but their HR do not have your back. So you do not, and arbitration is usually paid for by a court. In this case, it's paid for by Uber. So those people who are running arbitration have it in their best interest to protect the people who are paying them, not the people who are just simply complaining. I know you have a real reason to complain, but anyway. So what is this about the email address? Well, here's the thing. It used to be much harder to opt out of the arbitration clause. On July 15, 2013, Uber sent a software license and online service agreement to all of its drivers through the Uber app. The agreement stipulated, among other terms, that Uber does not provide transportation services and is not a transportation carrier. Now, I forgot to report on this. I think I either had too many things to talk about or it just slipped my mind. But yes, Uber sent out one of their user agreements, and in it, they said that by signing this new agreement, you are saying we are not a transportation service. They are making you unwilling pawns in their political fight to get AB5 overturned. Now, some of you will probably say, I don't care. I want AB5 to be dead. I don't like it. Heck, I shared my video about how AB5 was personally affecting me, and people said, oh, that's karma and all that. No, I knew about all of this. I'm being fair and showing that, yes, despite the fact that this is going to hurt me a little bit, I would still rather have it and have the drivers be paid better and treated like human beings than, that's the thing. I will give up a few minimal sacrifices on my end financially if it means everybody has a better quality of life dealing with these scumbags. But, yeah. And these are scumbags because here's the thing, AB5 is trying to state that Uber is a transportation business. So what does Uber do? They get their thousands of drivers to unwittingly agree that, hey, yeah, they're not a transportation service. I mean, the government says you are, but our drivers, the people who are driving for us, picking people up, delivering food, and doing everything and nothing but transportation, they're saying we're not a transportation company, so, whatever. But here's the thing. Should an Uber driver have to read the entire 15-page agreement over which they could not negotiate and needed to agree to in order to keep earning money, they would have learned that they were waiving their rights to sue Uber in court and agreeing to private mediation, otherwise known as arbitration, to be decided by an arbiter rather than an appointment judge. Because here's the thing. Uber tried this at one point. And there was a big deal. I remember me and Uberman and Rideshare Professor, we were all saying this. Hey, when you go to the new agreement, send an email an email to this email address that we were provided and get out of it, opt out of it. Now they're trying to get you to opt back into arbitration. Sneaky SOBs. Critically, it also prevented them from suing Uber as a group if the circumstances apply to all drivers, an important mechanism for customers of any business to challenge corporate wrongdoing in court. Uber maintained then and still maintains today that Uber drivers are their customers. No, we certainly don't work for them, even though they tell us what to do. So, actually, maybe, oh shoot, they might have a point. I mean, they screw us and we continue to do it anyway out of the goodness of our hearts. Maybe they have a point. Class actions are the typical private enforcement mechanism to force a company to stop violating the law, Duvall said. Because enough drivers have not opted out of these arbitration agreements to date, Uber has avoided a class action judgment which would otherwise force it to change how it does business. To be fair, the 2013 arbitration provision did include an opt-out mechanism. All drivers had to do was merely hand-deliver a letter to Uber's general counsel, whose identity the agreement did not disclose, within 30 days. If the driver could not hand-deliver a letter, he or she had to send their opt-out in hard copy via overnight mail and only via overnight mail. Yeah, so see, here's what it looked like, by the way. Must be postmarked within 30 days. You should not opt out of this arbitration. Uber shall be bound in terms of arbitration. Whatever. Yeah, here is it. Signed, delivered by nationally recognized overnight delivery service. So you're basically spending like $20 to get FedEx to hand deliver it, whatever. The irony of this was not lost on Liz Reardon, who filed a class action lawsuit against Uber a month later that, among other things, challenged the validity of the arbitration provision. One of the grounds of which she challenged it was how onerous it was to opt out of Uber, a company slavishly devoted to the Silicon Valley ethos of technological disruption, refused to acknowledge the existence of the internet in its arbitration opt-out process. Even more ironically, although the lawsuit Liz Reardon filed was fundamentally about the driver's employment status as independent contractors, it was specifically about the lack of tipping functionality within the Uber app. Boy, this brings back so much memories. At the time, and for years afterwards, Uber co-founder Travis Kalanick, well, whatever. Let's see here. Yet when it came to drivers opting out of the arbitration clause, suddenly friction was not a concern. It was in fact preferred. So, here's the thing. Here's what it is. The first 6 months of the lawsuit, O'Connor vs. Uber. 3 months into the case, the Judge Edward Chen told the respective parties to negotiate a new arbitration clause to address various problems with the 2013 one. The new one had to make clear much earlier in the document that Uber was the subject of ongoing litigation, and the arbitration clause would make drivers unable to join that suit. It would also have to make it easier for drivers to opt out, perhaps using this newfangled invention called the internet. That didn't go well. 4 months later, the two sides said negotiations were unfruitful and asked Judge Chen to settle the matter himself. In that ruling, Chen noticed Uber's suggestion made a pretty darn significant change. Drivers would no longer be able to opt out at all. This was from the ruling. However, the licensing agreement does not comply with the court's order in that it does not give any means of opting out. Contrary to the prior licensing agreement that gave 30 days to opt out of the arbitration provision by hand delivery or overnight mail, the new licensing agreement allows no opt-out. The new licensing agreement provides, if you choose not to accept this agreement, including the arbitration provisions, you will no longer have access to Uber services and software. I mean, look, people are like frying people who support AB5. Like, do you not realize how many jobs are going to be lost? You know what? Bite me. Seriously. Look at this. This is Uber saying, hey, you're going to do everything we tell you to do, and you will like it. And if you don't like it, you simply won't make any money. Oh, by the way, not employees. This was particularly irksome because Uber was now facing a potentially ruinous class action lawsuit, the very same case over which Judge Chen was presiding. Uber was trying to prevent any new drivers from joining that case by giving them an ultimatum. Either agree to join this or any other lawsuit, or don't work for us. On the other side, Chen also had problems with the plaintiff's wording, which he thought made it sound like the lawsuit would likely prevail and included a URL for information on the suit the court didn't control. He directed the parties to craft a new agreement that used Uber's wording but kept the opt-out provision and made it less odious to use. A month later, Uber returned to court with an updated proposal. This one did make a concession. It allowed for drivers to opt out via regular U.S. mail, which at least no longer requires the notice to be shipped overnight. Liz Reardon thought this wasn't good enough. After all, Uber's a technology company, according to the very same agreement. Why not use, technology like email? My nose is itching really bad. Uber by saying technology. What technology? This is going on a lot longer than I thought it would, but honestly, this is great. None of the electronic opt-out mechanisms proposed by plaintiffs' counsel currently exist, and all would require Uber to reprogram its systems and create new functionality. This burden is simply on wording. It's worth noting that one of the specific mechanisms Liz Riordan proposed was an email address. So here's the thing. Chen was having none of it, and he said, however, little technology is required simply to provide an email address to which drivers can send an opt-out notice. Moreover, given that the notices and revised licensing agreements are sent electronically, it is only fair that drivers be afforded an opportunity to opt out electronically. For her part, Dubal and law professor at UC Hastings thinks Chen got this wrong. She told Jalopnik this line of argument from Uber was patently absurd. Uber represents itself to be a technology company that is on the leading edge of advanced AI. They can't create an opt-out box in their electronic contract? That's ridiculous. In either event, this is how it came to be that Uber created an email address for drivers to opt out of arbitration. A judge had to make them. You know what? I'm going to leave it here on this. So, like, if anyone want to pause and read this shows just how scummy this company really is. Anyway, we're going to actually kind of, I don't feel like giving them free advertising. So, yeah. And people wonder why I support AB5. Seriously. This is like, it's because they do stuff like this. They really think they are above the law and that they can get away with whatever the heck they want. Well, no, they can't. They absolutely cannot. And I'm glad that situations like this come up so that they can be forced to basically so that they can be shown the fools that they are. But you know what? This is complicated. Well, no, it's not. It's Uber being jerks. So since it's not complicated, we will end it here now that I've went through a lot of this. Now, I did not read a lot of this article, and it's definitely worth reading in full. Like, when you read the full article, boy, do you realize the absurdity of this company. But we're going to leave it there. So what do you think about this? Do you think the judge was right to order that to create an email? Do you think the judge should have pushed a little harder? Or do you think the judge was actually being unreasonable? Do you think paying for an overnight letter, and only an overnight letter, or handing it to, the person in the Uber general counsel in person was perfectly fine? I would love to know. Comment below. We are talking about Lyft and Uber, sort of. Because here's the thing. Price fixing. Price fixing is illegal. It is illegal for a very good reason. It is anti-competitive. It is not fair. And throughout the last year and a half or so, there has been it's been kind of like an open secret that Lyft and Uber kind of price fix. They kind of do when you really stop and think about it. When Uber does one thing, Lyft matches them. And way back when Lyft did something, Uber matches them. They have been in a price war that could very easily be considered price fixing, considering the fact that they are a duopoly. And one of the Lyft's, who was it? Let me look at this. One of the employees at Lyft, we'll figure out exactly when we go back to this article. The name's escaping right now. Actually, kind of made a comment that if that doesn't sound like price fixing, it sounds an awful lot like Lyft is flirting with the idea of price fixing. But like I said, Uber and Lyft price fixing is kind of an open secret. We all sense they do it. We just can't actually prove it. What's interesting is this article by The Motley Fool. This website, for those of you who are not aware, is primarily an analyst trading website. They're the ones who will analyze companies, their potential growth, potential profits, whether or not the company is in good financial standing, and they will give you advice on whether or not you should buy, sell, or hold. Stock terms. So, buy and sell are pretty obvious. Hold is when you have it, but you hold it. You don't do anything with it. And they had this interesting headline: Are Lyft and Uber flirting with illegal price fixing? And it was Lyft CEO Logan Green. Why did I forget that? Dawns on me, I haven't talked about him in a while. They wrote this article, and this is actually kind of fascinating. So, price fixing is an agreement written verbal or inferred from conduct among competitors that raises, lowers, or stabilizes prices or competitive terms according to the Federal Trade Commission's definition of the illegal business practice. Generally, the antitrust laws require that each company establish prices and other terms on its own without agreeing with a competitor. Well, the nuances of antitrust law are beyond the scope of this article, and my analysts, just to let you know. I noted last month that there's a fine line between all companies and a sector recognizing the error of their ways and adjusting fares accordingly, and price fixing, which is an illegal form of market collusion. As the rideshare market continues to rationalize, i.e. raise prices to sustained levels, Uber and Lyft are seeing how close they can get to that line. Saying the quiet part loud. At the Credit Suisse Tech Conference earlier this month, Lyft CEO Logan Green sat down with analyst Stephen Ju to chat about a wide range of topics around the ride-sharing industry. Discussing Lyft's path to profitability, Green expectedly broached the issue of market rationalization. Green's conclusion includes some language that regulators could potentially find questionable, and the emphasis is added. So these bold parts, which I will emphasize in accordance with how this has been written, is what the author of the article felt was worth emphasizing. And having read the article, I agree. I might emphasize something extra on my own, though. There's also been a sort of general rationality of the market. So we took a little bit of risk for the first time and led the market into small, modest price increases over the last couple of quarters. I think that's been very healthy for the market. We've seen that matched by the competition. On the other side, we sort of attempted to do the same thing in terms of couponing and lead in creating a more rational market. We have not seen that match. So we're going to change our stance, and we'll sort of revert to a match and follow position. That's probably the most important part. So I think in terms of some of the future sales and marketing leverage, it's really dependent now on what the competition does. But I think broadly speaking, there's no reason we shouldn't see the sort of continued march to rationality in the market. No. This is not how this works. This is not how this works. Okay, so here's the thing. And by the way, before I will say, the U.S. ride-sharing industry is a duopoly between Uber and Lyft. The article very clearly states that, which I appreciate. But here's the thing. You have two companies. I know you have other companies out there like Buyer. I think someone turned me to something called Buyer today. It's very, I don't know, new rideshare company. And of course, Trip is out there, I guess. They launched the driver app in New York. Haven't heard much about it other than that, but I mean, they're kind of out there. But for all intents and purposes, Uber and Lyft are duopoly. And we've known this for a long time. Because whenever one lowers the price, you see the problem where passengers go from that service to another service. Whoever lowered the price, that's where the passengers go. So the other company has to do it lower. And then for a long time, and it's kind of been this way for a while, they just kind of stop. They cost the same, pretty much, same drivers in many cases, and they're kind of in a position now where they're realizing they don't need to compete anymore. Because there's no brand loyalty, you might as well not even try to continue this stupid price war, which you never should have begun in the first place. But now you have like an extra thing, because you know there's really no more competing in this regard. Guess what? You can now raise the price a little bit. The other company might keep it low for a week, but they'll raise the price too. They will, because what other choice is there? They're both losing money. And as long as they're not doing it egregiously so, like if one person doesn't hold too long, then the other is free to raise the price. Now, if one of them raises the price and the other one decides after a couple weeks to hold the price, the first company that raised that price, they will lower their price in return. That's how this works. This is how duopolies work. But here's the thing. You have the CEO of Lyft openly saying that they're going to change their stance. They will revert to a match and follow position, and it's really dependent on what the competition does. That sounds an awful lot like price fixing, and he's openly talking about it. Now, he didn't say that they're actually price fixing. He didn't say that he got into a room with Dara Khosrowshahi and said this is how it's going to work. It's just kind of how it is working right now. But the bottom line is the fact that you are very aware of what you're doing and you've actually stated that you will tweak your strategy to match those price increases. And it seems like the other side is not going to have a problem with that. Very strange. That's, sounds a lot like price fixing. So, here's the thing. Here's something else that's important. The FTC's definition includes an agreement that is inferred from conduct. So Uber and Lyft don't necessarily have to be having secret meetings in dark rooms to run afoul of its rules. The regulatory agency also points out that price fixing can come in many forms, including promotions and discounts. So, for example, I have had to use Uber and Lyft a few times recently. And I've been noticing that when one has a promotion, a couple days later, the other company will have that same promotion, the exact same promotion, and run it just as long. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there's usually like a little difference. Like, I think Uber offered me 25% off 5 rides, and Lyft offered me 25% off my next 10. So there was a slight variation there, but it's the same deal. It is the absolute same deal. I don't understand it. Unless they're just fixing the prices. Uber and Lyft notoriously spend lavishly on incentives for both riders and drivers, effectively subsidizing fares. There are a couple notable exceptions. Uber and Lyft may be in the clear if they have a legitimate justification for price changes. Some price changes may also occur from normal market conditions, such as imbalances between supply and demand. It's become abundantly clear that the unit economics of ride-sharing are atrocious, and prices need to rise if either company is going to stop incinerating cash. It'll be up to antitrust regulators, which are already scrutinizing various tech companies, to determine whether ride-sharing's ongoing rationalization crosses any legal thresholds. And yeah, I agree. That's where the lawmakers have to come in and make their decision. In my opinion, they are, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a politician. I'm just a little fat guy on YouTube complaining about these things, wearing a Batman Santa hat, complete with its own cape. Because I love my wife, and I want to be in the festive spirit for her. But anyway, so that's where we're going to leave that one. I personally think they've been in price fixing for a long time, but that's my personal opinion, not legal opinion. What about all of you, though? Do you agree with this article? Do you agree that this is price fixing? Or do you think, no, it's not price fixing? And heck, here's an interesting thing. If you ride with Uber and Lyft, have you noticed anything majorly different with the company and how it does its promotions or prices? Like, do you notice any difference that would lead you to believe that they are not in bed together? I would love to know. So, comment below. Let's talk about Uber employee independent contractor status, because yeah, this is one of my favorite topics. It really is. I get so many interesting comments below. I will get more. And they range from either, yeah, you go get them, you tell them that we're employees, to like, how can you not see this is a bad idea? Guys, I see both sides of the story. That's why you come to me. That's why some people of you think that I'm a Republican, and some of you think I'm a Democrat. I am looking at all sides of the story. And you know who else is supposed to do that? Judges. Judges are supposed to be impartial, unbiased, and look at nothing but the facts. And Uber has had several lawsuits, including one fairly recently, where drivers are suing Uber to make them employees, partly because they opted out of arbitration, and they are allowed to do that, and also because of the upcoming AB5 law. But a judge in California has so far decided he's not so sure Uber drivers are employees just yet. So this is from Bloomberg. Uber judge balks at making drivers employees for now. So, Uber Technologies, Inc. beat back an aggressive bid to force it to treat California drivers as employees. I'm just going to already state from the first sentence, one of the issues with the statement is it's like, well, I think the drivers are already feeling like they are treated like employees, that thus they want to get paid like employees and have the benefits like employees do. Uber holds a lot of power over them. They control a lot of strings. They force them to arbitration agreements. It's not a pretty picture. And they want to actually get what's owed to them for being treated like employees. So I think the sentence gets it wrong right off the get-go, and I just want to make it known. But the rest of the article is pretty interesting. But a judge's ruling may allow a long-running fight over pay and benefits to gain traction in 2020. U.S. District Judge Edward Chen declined Monday to order Uber to instantly convert drivers in its home state from contractors to employees based on an argument that it's cheating not just workers but also the public at large. But the San Francisco judge, which that's probably the most surprising thing about this, that this is being ruled on like this in San Francisco, also refused to throw out the case, an early test of a California law aimed at gig economy companies that's set to take effect January 1st. In what may turn out to be a significant threat to Uber's business model, Chen concluded the case presents, quote, a plausible claim that any misclassification by Uber is willful. So, what is this saying right now? Like, what is going on exactly? Well, again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, so I might be just a little off. But from what I am understanding, the judge does not think there is sufficient, at least the arguments he's heard so far, do not convince him that Uber should make all their independent contractors employees. He doesn't feel like the arguments are strong enough at that point. However, they are strong enough that he wants to look at what they're doing and some of the changes they're making, and there's enough evidence there that, well, that the case is showing that the misclassification by Uber is willful. He thinks that it might be there, and to what he believes it is there, he believes it might be willful. So therefore, it's not ruled on yet, and in fact, it might even go to trial, which, by the way, I think this is what more judges should do. I've been following a couple other legal cases, small-time legal cases, that I'm not talking about here because they don't have anything to do with the gig economy. And I've seen judges make, well, okay, one's a small time, one's a big one. But I've seen judges in both these cases actually throw things out and make claims on things that honestly are very debatable, where I'm kind of thinking like, I don't think the judge should have the power to make a claim on that. That seems like it should be tried in front of a jury, because that's probably where I think the jury should be coming in. You need people to debate these things. So hopefully we'll get to that point with this case. AB 5, signed by California Governor Gavin Newsom in September, says workers can generally only be considered contractors if they perform duties outside the usual course of a company's business. Legal experts say the law weakens Uber's argument that its drivers are independent contractors, and even the company acknowledges the law creates a higher hurdle. I also think that the company itself has been making a strong case that we're not independent contractors for a long time. I mean, the consistent rate cuts, it's all bad. So anyway, Shannon Liz Riordan, one favorite woman, the lawyer representing the drivers and a longtime Uber nemesis, argued AB 5 was passed in order to stop Uber and the rest of the gig economy from misclassifying its workers. Liz Riordan said in an email that she'll refile the complaint and looks forward to proceeding with the case and at last requiring Uber to comply with California law. Chen said it's premature to order Uber to immediately reclassify its California drivers, given that arbitration agreements they signed barring them from pursuing their grievances in court will likely diminish the number who would benefit, which the judge said is still ill-defined. But he refused Uber's request to dismiss the complaint, finding the driver who filed it could form the basis of a lawsuit based on the 2018 Dynamex decision by California's highest court. The ruling applies a more straightforward test to determine which workers qualify for employee status and the attendant benefits. Legal experts widely agree that test, especially as codified by AB 5, will make it much harder for Uber to continue to deny California driver benefits, including business expense reimbursements that would ordinarily be available to employees. And if you want to look at this case yourself, the case is Calapi versus Uber Technologies, Inc. Here's the information. You can search this up in the U.S. District Court in Northern District of California, San Francisco. So here's the thing. This is kind of refreshing to me. I know a lot of people are probably not happy with this outcome because we want answers. We want it to be defined, darn it. We want to know exactly, are we employees or are we not? And the judge is not saying we are. He's also saying we're not. He is saying he doesn't know. He cannot make that decision right now. And depending on what kind of case this is, I don't even know if he can make that decision. It might be one of those lawsuits that has to go to trial. And in that case, a jury will probably decide. This is how the legal system works. There's different kinds of lawsuits. I don't know which one this is. I think this is just class action, actually, now that I think about it. But, class actions can get pretty ugly. So, yeah, I think the judge made a wise call. He's not saying yes or no. He's just saying we need more information. So that's where we're going to leave it. And what do you think? Do you think the judge made a right call, or do you think he should have done this? What is your opinion on this? And hey, while we're at it, what do you prefer, McDonald's or Burger King? I would love to know. Comment below. Let's talk about Uber getting banned from Germany again. Now, I went to Germany a couple years ago. In fact, I was making videos in Germany, like recording them and then uploading them. It was actually a lot of fun. There was even one video where one of my most controversial videos where I talked about a handicapped lawsuit against Uber. And there was like a handicapped vehicle there, so I kind of used it like in the video at that moment, kind of spur of the moment thing. Got a lot of comments on that one, but yeah, that was fun. But I used Uber in Germany because it is convenient. Like, for all the bad things we say about it, is convenient. But Uber worked very differently in Germany than other places. In Germany, you could not actually use the Uber app to get an Uber. You use the Uber app to call a cab. And cab drivers, particularly ones who spoke English, use the Uber app because everyone who used the Uber apps was pretty much American. Germans didn't seem to really use Uber that much, probably because it was just a taxi service, and they probably have other ways to call a taxi. Also, they have a very great public transportation system. The only reason we didn't use it a couple times is because there were specific things we wanted to do, and we did not have time to learn exactly how to use the public transportation system. There was too much at stake. We wanted to make sure we were there on time. Well, apparently, if I ever go back to Germany, and that's a good possibility, I do want to go back to Germany someday, I won't be using an Uber because Uber has just officially been banned from Germany again. However, before we talk about that, let me tell you a little bit about our sponsors, GigOrder.com. GigOrder.com is a site that provides a lot of information to Uber, Lyft, Postmates, DoorDash, all these drivers of the gig economy, and they need your help right now. In the link below, in the description, they want you to take a survey. It takes 5 to 7 minutes at most, and this survey will be used for media outlets like Vice and Vox and cable TV networks to share what Uber drivers are feeling. It's only going to take a little bit of time, and they want to give you $5, $5 whole for you to take this survey. All you have to do is provide a screenshot for last week's Uber rides and a PayPal verified email address, and you'll get paid on Saturday. So you want $5 and have 5 minutes to spare? Click that link below and get paid. So from Reuters, German court bans Uber services via rental cars in Germany. A German court has banned Uber services in Germany, arguing the U.S. ride-hailing company lacks a necessary license to offer passenger transport services using rental cars. The verdict is effective immediately but can be appealed, and I'm sure they will do that, the Frankfurt Regional Court said in a statement on Thursday. The court in 2015 forbid Uber from matching up drivers using their own cars with ride-hailers, hence probably why when I was in Germany, I believe it was 2017 I was in Germany, maybe it was 2018. Time flies fast. It's scary. We opened the Uber app and we couldn't get taxis. So, there you go. But hey, I got to go meet Adam Koralik while I was in Germany. That was an interesting bit of timing, I'd say. Uber service, which lets customers hail rides carried out in rented cars, is also illegal as it violated competition rules, the court said. Uber was not immediately available for content. That's pretty much all this. So yeah, that's a pretty short one. Germany basically took a look at Uber. Uber was and said, you don't have a license for that, so you're gone. You're absolutely gone. And look, it's hard to cry tears for them. I mean, I don't think this is going to hurt as much as getting kicked out of London. Keep in mind, in Germany, they were simply connecting other taxi drivers to their customers and taking a very small fee. While they will be hurt, obviously, because I think that's more lucrative than them providing their own service, it's not generating a lot of money. I mean, they kind of kept it around so that they would have like a footprint in Germany, and I think they wanted to eventually launch their rideshare service in Germany, but they could never get around the regulations, and unlike America, I guess they decided they didn't want to force their way into the country, so, now we are where we are. So I don't know what they're going to do about Germany. I'm sure they will appeal this. Whether they will win or not, I don't know. Germany has not been very kind towards Uber, and Uber has given them no reason to trust them. So I think Germany might be a place that Uber eventually just finds they don't have a presence there at all. They might be able to get one in the future. Who knows? I can't imagine people in Berlin not wanting a service like Uber. It's very, very convenient, and I'm sure they even acknowledge that. But, they don't trust Uber, and frankly, I don't think they have a lot of reason to trust them right now. So that's where we're going to leave it. This is a short one, very straight to the point. What do you folks think? Do you think Germany made the right call? Do you think they didn't make the right call? I would love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy videos, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, of course, but even as low as $1 a month goes a long way to helping the channel run smoothly and to get access to my Patreon's exclusive blog and private Discord server. If gas prices are getting a little low, check out the Get Upside app below. It's totally free. We get cash back on every gas purchase. If you want more content from me, check me out, Kevin T. Rodriguez, the Apptrepreneur Vlogs, and Autoground. And finally, if you want to talk to me or other fellow Uber drivers out there, check us out at the Apptrepreneur Hangouts on Facebook. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.